Welcome back to our weekly podcast. I'm here with Pastor Jason Jarvis from Calera Baptist Church, and usually, if you've been watching with us for a while, I ask the questions.
Sure.
And you give us some really good biblical sound advice, I will say. But this time I'm going to flip the script, and you're going to ask me a question, so go.
I was not prepared for this.
Well, I'm not prepared either.
Okay, I'll ask you a question. You put me on the spot, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
What part of Matthew, the first few chapters that we've been going through in our reading plan, have you enjoyed the most?
I've enjoyed all of it. No, we actually have been going through the reading plan, and
Good.
So each and every night, we sit down and we spend a few minutes watching your video and diving into the Word. And I think with Matthew, I don't really have a specific favorite part that we've gone over so far. I just, look forward to, the story of Jesus and what all he went through on this earth with us. It tells us that he wept as well, just as we weep. And, there were certain challenges that Jesus faced that, as far as like the devil tempting him, we all go through that as well. And so I look forward to those moments where I just have this pivotal moment where I realize, wow, he's actually going through the same things that we go through in our everyday life. And granted, his reaction is definitely a little bit better than mine, I would say. But, to see that he went through the same things as we do, just kind of brings it all together for me. So
yeah, sometimes it's hard for us to remember that he allowed himself to experience so many things that you and I experience every day.
Yeah,
and to think that he grew up. I mean, it's hard to wrap our mind around that whole idea that he was fully God and fully man.
Yeah, it is.
And yet he grew up. He grew in stature. How do we even make sense of that in our mind? And the answer is not, well, it couldn't have happened. The answer is we just don't fully understand it. And yet when we go back and read that, it just reminds us again, God had a plan. He started it before time even began. He put it in place. And the idea of him fulfilling the prophecies that he had given us. And so, at the beginning of Matthew, I love the first chapter. And a lot of people get caught up in, well, it's genealogy.
Yeah.
But if you go back and study the history of God's people, what you'll find is as the genealogy is given to us, we can follow the story of the Old Testament through these people, each line, each generation, and you start to see how God was putting his plan together from the beginning. And when we see that, we realize our God's not just someone who has a plan, he has the plan.
Yeah.
And when we see how he put it together, it is just so awesome. He doesn't make mistakes. And so I wish I could put plans together like that.
I know.
But at the same time, I'm not God, and so I have to seek him and ask him for the plan and be obedient to that. And so we learn that time and time again when we read stories like this.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing about it, though, is it's true.
Yeah.
It's not just a story. It's not just a parable. It's something that actually happened. And so I'm so thankful for Matthew and Mark, Luke, and John. I'm so glad that the Gospels, that the Gospel men, the writers, that they were obedient to God in writing the story of Jesus.
Yeah. And it just, Jesus was perfect, right? Never sinned, and yet he went through some hard times and some trials, and so nobody escapes it. I don't want people to think that if you're a Christian, you're not going to go through struggles in life, because you are, and you're going to have decisions that you have to make. And as I go through this series, I'm learning more and more to kind of put my anxiety and my worries and just give it to God, because I cannot control the outcome. He's the only one that can control the outcome. And that's really hard for me, because I love being in control. I mean, not that you can tell, but I just like things to go a certain way. And when they don't, I just have to remind myself, this isn't God's plan. It may be a no right now, but maybe it's not a no forever, and I won't know. And I have to keep that relationship open and that line of communication open. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
And when we put that in the context of what we've been studying even on Sundays, when you go back to Luke and you see, look how Zechariah and Elizabeth, how their life was changed.
Yeah.
things didn't go as they planned.
Right.
Look at Mary and Joseph. Things weren't going as they planned, and yet God was doing something that was miraculous in their life.
Right.
And Mary being so humble and so determined to say, I'm a servant, and whatever the Lord wants, so be it. It's okay. It's going to be all right. It wasn't just all right. It was wonderful. She got to experience the Savior, the King, the one they had been waiting on for hundreds of years. They've been telling each other from generation to generation about the coming of the Savior, the Messiah. And so now she's experiencing that, and not just seeing it, but being a part of it. And so in our own lives, I think God does that as well. And so even though we do face hard times, we face hard decisions, and sometimes we make the wrong ones.
Yeah.
God's working in us, and He's wanting to do something through our lives. And so we just need to trust Him. Just trust Him and watch and see what He'll do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what can we look forward to this week?
This week we get more into Zechariah's response to what God had done in bringing him a son. And so we see him praising God and recognizing, even going back to the prophets and reminding us of what they had spoken of. I started to say what they had promised, but it's what God had promised through them. And so he goes back and quotes some of those things and helps us understand really just how wonderful what God was doing, how wonderful it really was.
Yeah.
And so John being the forerunner, John being the Elijah they were looking for, God giving him the ability to experience that, and him praising him and blessing him because of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Our service times this Sunday morning are 8:30 and 10:45 per usual, with small groups right in between that. And we cannot wait to see you here.